All right, so it's 7 o'clock Eastern time here in Boston, so we can begin. Welcome back to many familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Allie. I am a doctor of physical therapy as well as a nationally certified Pilates instructor. I've practiced here in Boston over the last 5 years and teach with the Community Online Academy every Thursday all day since we began back in March. So what we have today is our traditional back pain program. This is a 30-minute class. It's going to be almost entirely movement based. I will save a few minutes at the end for any questions that come up. But during this class, I would just encourage you to listen to your body. Please take the options and modifications that feel right for your body. Nothing we do in class today should bother your back, and if it is, go ahead and scale it back a little bit or take one of the options to modify that I offer. That way you can leave this class feeling better than you came into it and hopefully ready to tackle your day. So we're gonna get started lying down on your back, and we'll get connected to our breath, connected to our movements. So find a comfortable position. You can choose to lie totally flat. You can also choose to have your knees bent, feet flat. So I'll join you guys back on the mat here. Let me just tip that down a tiny bit. Oops, there's never a good in between there. Okay. All right, so finding a comfortable position down onto your mat, I'm going to choose to have my knees bent, but you can have your legs all the way extended if that feels better for your body. And just take a moment to settle onto the mat. Allow your body to rest down, letting go of tension in the back, maybe tension in the head, neck, and jaw. And just feel that gently start to release as you lie here on the mat. And as you get connected to the melting of your body on the mat, start to visualize your breath. We focus a lot on deep breathing during this back pain class, and that deep breath is really important for a couple of reasons. It creates stability around our spine by managing what we call our intra-abdominal pressure. And that level of pressure is carefully calibrated to help our backs feel supported, but not under pressure. So that deep belly breathing can help moderate the intra-abdominal pressure that may build over the course of the day. So we take inhale breaths in through our nose, and an exhale breath out through the mouth, letting go of some of that air. We inhale breath in through the nose, and an exhale breath out through the mouth. We'll try once more here. Big inhale breath in through the nose, open up to expand, and an exhale breath out through the mouth. Now we're going to take that right into our pelvic tilting motion. So start to curl your tailbone back towards your face and gently unravel. And as you're doing this rocking motion, it should be within your body's comfortable range of motion, but I want you to try and pair it with your breathing. So exhale, blowing out through the mouth as you close the space behind your low back. Inhale to open up that space, letting it go. Exhale, rock the tailbone towards your face. Inhale, rock the tailbone towards your feet. So work at your own comfortable pace. This doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be a big movement either. We're just trying to get a little bit of spinal movement front to back in our lower back. Good. 4 more. And 3. That's it here, guys. 2. And the last time, go ahead and walk your feet together, knees together. So we just did spine movement front to back. Now we're going to do some spine movement side to side. So let your legs start to rock from side to side. This should also be within your body's comfortable range of motion. So if you feel pain or pinching going super far to one side, you want to stop right before that point. And see here if you can do this, keeping your knees together and your feet together. And you can notice if you feel a little bit more tightness on one side of your body than the other. That's okay, just notice it for right now. Hopefully, as we move a little bit through this class, you start to gain some range of motion, both in rotation and that front to back direction. We'll try about 3 more here. Good. Last 2. Once more here, and then settle somewhere right in the middle. From this position, separate your feet a little bit wider than they were, so they're about hips distance apart, and glue the whole foot into the floor. I want you to almost feel like you're gripping the ground with your toes and simultaneously pressing the heel into the mat. We're going to do a bridging movement, but an articulated bridge, meaning we're lifting one vertebrae at a time, and then we're placing our spine back down one vertebrae at a time. It starts with a pelvic tilt. So we're going to try that pelvic tilt and then continue to lift the spine up one vertebrae at a time. And when we come back down, we're letting our rib cage come down, our mid back, lower back, tailbone is the last thing to release on the mat. So when you start with this movement, sometimes it feels like you're lifting all the vertebrae in a big chunk. I want you to slow down your movement, but know that this bridging motion also kind of doubles as a little stretch for the backside of your spine. And so it can take a couple of repetitions to really warm up and feel that curling motion off the mat. You can envision here your spine like a string of pearls that you're gently picking up one pearl at a time, and you're softening and melting that one pearl back down onto the mat. Now, as you're curling up and lifting, notice your feet once again. Has all the body weight shifted to the outside of your feet? See if you can continue to press down through the big toes as well as the heel, especially as you lower your hips back down. Do you feel one side of your spine hitting the mat or leaving the mat before the other side, or is it nice and even right down the middle? See if you can really focus in on creating that stillness so that it's even right across the middle of your back as you melt down and as you lift on up. That's it here, guys. We'll try 2 more. Gently curl, rolling back, scoop up to lift, and soften, melting back down. This is our last one here. Curling on up, lifting through the hips, and gently melting the spine all the way back down. So when you come back down, I want you to find what's called the neutral spine. So somewhere between the 2 extremes of your pelvic tilt, and there should be minimal space under the back of your rib cage. Once you're in that neutral spine, bring your hands to your belly so you can feel that there's no movement underneath your belly as you start to march your legs. So this is a simple movement. This lifting of your legs mimics the movement that we might do with walking, certainly with running, with stairs. And your goal is to keep your back nice and still as you do this motion. So this is a leg movement. We want the movement to be in our legs. We don't want it to be in our back. And that takes a little bit of core strength here to keep your spine steady. If you're having a hard time keeping your back still, slow down your movement. Try exhaling as though you're blowing out through a straw as you pick your legs up. Now, if this is super easy, you say, no problem, everything's still. I'm going to bring both legs up to tabletop. Recheck that you're in your neutral spine, so draw the rib cage down. Leave that small space under your low back, and then you're going to reverse. Instead, reaching the heel to the floor and bringing it back up. Now, you may not get all the way to the floor. For me, if I go all the way to the floor, my rib cage is going to leave the mat. So I'm going to stop right at that point, returning the leg back up to tabletop. Lower down, exhale, lift up. Lower, exhale, lift up. You've got it. Press the back rib cage into the mat. Keep your neck long. Good. Try 3 more. And 2. Last time here, lower it down. Place both feet down. You're going to hug your knees in towards your chest and give yourself a gentle rock from side to side. Now, see if you can use this rock to rock yourself all the way on up to a seated position. Awesome. So we're going to flip on over to an all-4 setup next. If you know you need a little bit of padding for your knees, you can go ahead and roll up your mat a few times or use that pillow if you have a pillow handy. So we'll set up with our hands underneath our shoulders, knees underneath our hips, and we'll start with a little cat-cow motion. So that's rounding the spine, letting your head hang down, and then dropping your rib cage to the floor. This should be within your body's comfortable range of motion as well. But as you work through these 2 extremes, I want you to really think about creating the movement from your rib cage. So letting the front of your ribs drop down, then lifting the front of the ribs to press to the ceiling. Let the ribs drop down and lift the ribs towards the ceiling. One more time like that. We let the ribs drop down, and then we lift the rib cage up to the ceiling. Now settle somewhere right in the middle. So that should be a flat upper back with a very gentle curve of your low back. And that is your neutral spine. Now, we talked about keeping your back still when your legs are moving. We're going to try that again here by pushing hips backwards and then shifting hips forward. This is called pelvic rocking. And so basically, we're imagining that we have a glass of water on our low back. We're going to rock front to back, trying not to round our back or arch it as we move. And in doing so, that means that we are creating this movement from our hip joint. This is what's called a hip hinge. Hip hinge is what we use to do squatting and bending over while protecting our back. So we're allowing our hips to bend and then keeping the back steady. So you're imagining using the front of your rib cage to draw up and in as though it's giving your stomach a gentle hug. See if you can press back maybe a little bit farther this time, challenging that range of motion. And you'll feel if I go too far, my back starts to round. So I know that that's kind of the limit of my hip mobility. And this is another good way to test out, what does your hip range of motion look like? Try 2 more. That's it here, guys. Last time, and then we're gonna settle in the middle. Now, if your wrists are getting tired, you can come down onto your forearms, but we're gonna do a little balance work here. So keeping your neutral spine, reach your left arm straight out to the side with your palm facing down. I'd like you to try and reach a little bit farther to the left. Palm continues to face down. Unlock your opposite elbow, drop the shoulder away from the ear, and just hold this position. You should feel your core have to work to support you asymmetrically. We hold and breathe for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You can lower your hand down, take a moment's rest, and then we're going to use that hand to actually take this into a stretch. So reach your arms straight out to the side. We're going to rotate now, looking up to the ceiling, and then follow that hand, threading it underneath your standing arm, letting your head, neck, and shoulders rest down onto the mat. From here, we rotate, reach that hand up to the ceiling, follow it with your eyes, and gently twist, letting the opposite elbow bend as you thread your hand through. I call this one thread the needle. And you want to think of, while you're doing this thread the needle, of flaring your tailbone up to the ceiling. So helping you keep that neutral spine alignment of your lower back. This really is actually a stretch that targets our upper back, but it is a nice tractioning through the low back to have the hips up a little bit higher than your heart. So keeping that nice flare of the tailbone will enhance that traction stretch. We'll try once more on this side. We'll hold it down in that twisted position. Take a deep breath in, expand the ribcage wide out to the side, and then come right back to the center. I'm going to turn so you guys can continue to see me as we set up for the second side here. So once you're in this position, drop the shoulders down away from the ears, reset and lift your ribcage up away from the floor, keeping your neck long. We reach the opposite hand out to the side with your palm facing down. Try holding that arm balance. Can you shift a little bit more towards your lifted arm? That way your hips actually stay even, because chances are you shifted more body weight into that standing hand. Try and reach a little bit farther out to the side. And we hold for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring your hand down. Take a moment's rest. And then we'll set right up for that thread the needle. So reach your hand out. We're going to rotate, twist up towards the ceiling. Thread your hand underneath the opposite arm. Let your elbow bend and head, neck, and shoulders rest down onto the mat. So I'll turn from the front so you guys can see this full movement pattern. Rotating underneath, head, neck, shoulders rest down. Work within your body's comfortable range of motion. This should not be painful. If it is, you can make it a little bit smaller or a little bit slower. If you need to modify for shoulder sensitivity, keep a soft bend in your elbows. So when you reach up, you're still twisting your chest, but you can keep your elbow bent. And that's because this really is a spine stretch more than a shoulder stretch. The shoulder is kind of just an added benefit here. Remember to continue to flare the tailbone back behind you as you do these little stretches. So I'll turn. We'll go for 3. That's it here, guys. Last 2. Thread underneath. One more time, big stretch up. We're gonna hold that gentle twist. We'll take a pause, take a big deep breath into the sides of the ribs and let that air go. Coming back to your all fours position, and then we're gonna lower down onto your stomach. So you can lower yourself down comfortably. If you need a pillow underneath your hips, you can absolutely do so here. Just separate your feet a little bit wider than hips distance and plant your hands flat underneath your shoulders. We're gonna go into our press up. So elbows are narrow. Start to open up, lifting your upper back and then gently lowering back down. If you're comfortable going up a little bit higher, pushing all the way up into your low back, you can do so here now. So work within what is comfortable for your body. I'd like you to think of dropping the shoulders immediately away from the ears as you begin to press up. Glue your hands into the floor. If you need more support, take your hands just a little bit wider than shoulder distance and push into all 5 fingers. So spread your hands out like a fan and really push into the full width of your hand. At the same time, if you're getting pinching or pain in your lower back, try lifting the front of your rib cage up away from the floor as you curl your spine up off the mat. You've got it. Let's try 3 more here. And softly melt and lower back down. Good. 2 more. Lift up, shine your heart forward, and softly melt back down. 1 more time like this. Pressing on up, 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 lift, and softly, gently lower all the way back down. We're gonna roll onto our side. So I'm gonna roll onto my right side first, if you guys would like to follow my cues, and make a little pillow with your bicep. From here, we're gonna do a little bit of work for the side hip. And so I'd like you to bend your knees about a 90-degree angle so that your feet line up with your hips. Your knees are in front of your body. In this position, you may feel a little bit of back pain here. I want you to think of taking your top left hip and reaching it away from your body. So reaching it down towards your heels. And you can notice how that actually takes this space between your left rib and hip on the top and makes it a little bit bigger. So it lengthens our spine. Once you have that position, I want you to keep the heels hugging together. You're gonna start to lift and lower that top knee, still keeping the heels together so your feet stay connected. If you lift and you feel your whole body rolling backwards, that's too big. This is another test here of how can we move our hips without moving our back. And so your spine should be totally still. Keep thinking of reaching that top hip towards your heels and actively hugging the heels together. You're gonna start to feel the work in the outside of your top hip. That muscle is the muscle that helps to keep our pelvis level when our legs are doing 2 different things. And keeping your pelvis level is really important. That's what helps protect our back from lots of shearing forces. Go ahead, continue to lift and lower. This is called a clamshell. So you can imagine your legs like a clam opening and closing its shell. Good. 4 more. 3. Last 2. Good, guys. Once more here and gently lower down. Excellent. So that's a muscle that even though we didn't use any resistance, it starts off really easy and that can start to build up and become more of a challenge. It's an endurance muscle. So we want to do a little higher repetition with light weight. So bend the knees in nice and close towards your chest. Now you're going to pull them in even closer. We're going to do another little upper back rotation. So take that top hand, reach it out in front of you. You're going to reach that top arm up and back behind you. This is called book openings. So if you imagine opening the page of a giant book, if you guys were in my class last week, we did this one. This is also, like I said, another upper back rotation. So if you were in class last week, you know that I added another option here, which is to reach the arm over the top of your head like a rainbow pattern. So that would look like this. reaching and tracing all the way back to the floor behind you, and then keeping your hand down on the floor to retrace back to the center. So my plant here is in the way a little bit, so I'm going to get stuck there, but you can imagine keeping your fingertips on the floor, drawing a rainbow back behind you. And you want to try and keep your fingertips down as long as you can if you're adding in that option. If you're doing that more traditional book opening here, just let your head be heavy on your arm. Gently follow your top hand with your eyes if that's comfortable. And you might hear some clicking and popping in your back. That's actually okay. It's telling us that you're getting some mobility through your spine, especially your upper back here. Your knees should stay together. That protects your low back in this setup. We'll try twice more. Good. And once more here. Excellent. Now, you guys can just roll to the other side. I'm going to sit up so that I can continue to see you all. And we'll set up for that second side clamshell first. So using the back edge of your mat to line up, you're going to keep your head down, bring your feet back in line with your hips so they are both at the back edge of your mat, and then hug the heels together. Knees are bent to a 90-degree angle. Think of pressing your top hip towards your heels. That's a really important step to keep the work in your hip and not in your back. And then we start with that lift and lower. So a good way to know if your hips are aligned is to check the space between your top rib and hip, in this case, our right side. If that feels really crunched or like there's no space at all, work to press that hip away from your body. That also means that there is a small space under your bottom rib cage. So it's kind of like you're holding a side plank here, but laying down on your side. Go ahead, continue to lift and lower. I know for me, this side feels much weaker, and sometimes you may have that, especially on the side that you have back pain. This is a muscle that tends to get really weak with certain types of back pain. Hugging the heels together, gently lifting and lowering. Your spine should be totally steady. So imagine like you're laying up against a wall. You don't want your hips to roll backwards every single time. So you want to just stay flush with the wall. 2 more. Last time here, drop it down. Good. Now bend both knees in a little bit closer, and we're going to go for that book opening. So reach that top arm out in front of you, tap the floor in front of you, and then rotate to reach back behind you. Good. So nice and gentle here. If you would like to add that optional rainbow reach, you're going to keep your hand on the floor, drawing an arc up and over the top of your head, keeping your hand down on the floor as long as you can. And that should help you to really open up into a little bit of side bending, as well as a nice rotation for the upper back. And because we're working on your upper back here, your upper back connects to your rib cage. So you want your breath to be big. Think of your lungs like a balloon, that if you inflate that balloon a lot, the rib cage that holds it in is going to expand. It's going to move a little bit, which is good. We want movement through the ribs to allow our breath to be comfortable, but to also keep our upper back flexible. Go ahead, let's try twice more like this. We rotate and gently twist. One more time here. And gently twist to close. We're going to roll right back onto our stomachs here, but this time push ourselves up and back into a shell stretch or a child's pose. So you can choose to have your knees apart, toes together, or knees together, and reach your hips back to sit back onto your feet. Whatever position is comfortable for your body. If it's comfortable to let your forehead rest onto the mat, you can do so here. I'm going to separate my knees a little bit to get that range of motion. Take a big, deep breath, filling the backside of your lungs with air, and then walk both hands over to the right side of the mat, taking a nice long stretch through your side body. And then you can walk both hands up and over to the left side of your mat. Once again, taking that long spine stretch through your side body. Big breath in here through the nose, and a big breath out through the mouth. Gently press yourself on up to a seated position. We're going to take this now into a hip flexor stretch. So hip flexors are on the front side of our body. They connect from the front of our hip all the way to our low back. So they're very important in managing back pain. So we're going to come up to kneeling. If you need pillows under your knees or roll up your mat a couple of times, you can do so here. Step your right foot forward so you have about a 90-degree bend at your front leg and your back leg. Notice if your hips are kind of uneven, try and square your hips by rotating your left hip forward, right hip back, and pick your chest up so you are stacked right on top of your back leg. Once you're in this position, you might already feel the stretch in the front of your left hip. If you don't, you can bend forward gently into that right leg until you do feel the stretch in the front of your left hip. You want to pick that chest up tall, engage your left glute muscle, engage your core, and breathe. That should help enhance the stretch you feel in the front of that left hip. So if you'd like to build even a little bit more, reach that left hand up to the ceiling, right hand down towards the floor, and you're going to bend gently to the right side. Allow your breath to be comfortable and natural. If you feel wobbly here, don't be afraid to hold on to something. This is a stretch I want you to be able to relax into a little bit. So if it helps you to have a better support for balance, add that in here. We'll take one more big deep breath in like this and gently let it go. You can bring your hands to the floor, step that right foot back, this time bringing the left foot forward to find those 90-degree angles with your front and back leg. Square off your hips by rotating right hip forward, left hip back. Pick your chest up nice and tall, keeping the spine tall and lifted. Maybe you feel the stretch in the front of your right hip already, but if you do not, you can bend your left knee until you start to feel the stretch in the front of your right hip. Your right glute, as well as your core, should be active here. We're keeping the spine tall. And if you'd like to deepen and add to that stretch, reach your left hand to the ceiling, right hand to the floor, and add a gentle side bend. So reaching up and over, reaching that left hand down towards the floor. Option to hold on here if you need that added balance and support. Continue to reach that left hand down towards the floor and right arm up to the ceiling as though you are stretching a string between your two hands. We'll take one more big deep breath in here. And then gently let it go. We're gonna find a comfortable seated position to finish with some community breaths together. So any comfortable seat is fine. I'd like you to try and sit your spine up as tall as you can. Feel your hips resting down into the mat below you. Rib cage is lifting up off your own hips, and you can bring your hands to your belly. We'll try taking a couple of deep breaths in through the nose, exhaling out through the mouth. Just make sure that you can really fill your belly and your rib cage with air. And once you have that, we're going to add in our arms here. So this time we inhale, reach the arms up tall overhead, stretch long, exhale, let that air go. Again, another inhale breath, stretch tall, reach long, exhale, release, let it go. Once more here, big inhale, stretch, lift tall, exhale, release, and let it go. You guys are all set for the movement-based part of our class. So nice work there. I hope that you learned a little bit about the two sides of your body, maybe any differences you noticed between those two sides. I also hope that you learned a couple of stretches that you can integrate throughout the day. So remember that you don't need to do them all at once. You can take little bits and pieces of what you learned from today to add into your regular routine of taking little posture breaks over the course of the day. So I'd like to spend our very last minute answering any questions that you have. I'll get a little bit closer. Since you guys are this 5-star group, you're more than welcome to send any questions into the chat, but you can also unmute yourself to ask a question if you'd like. So either option is fine. Just a reminder as well for our 5-star members that you guys can sign up for classes as early as 12 p.m. Eastern time next week. I'm actually going to be off next week. So I will miss you guys. I am going to be away for my anniversary. We're taking a little trip, which I'm very excited. I haven't gone anywhere in months. So I'll miss you guys next week, but back to regular schedule.